Chapter 4, World of Prey. Natsumi groans, her head spinning as her home has arrived onto the next world. The group stares at the new backdrop and Dragonic declares grinning, facing the others. Welcome to the world of Kiva. Natsumi is startled to see a massive dragon-like castle within a large building. That doesn't even make any sense. Kiva, huh? So we'll be dealing with the Fangare. Tsukasa proclaims, sitting on a chair as he was wearing something completely different now. This time it resembles a musician's outfit with a violin case on the table. Natsumi blinks and notices it before she asks, puzzled, "What are you wearing this time? Tsukasa-kun?" Tsukasa blinks, looking down to notice the outfit. He hums, standing up and looking at his reflection from the mirror. "Not bad," he comments, praising his good looks. He reaches the case and opens it, showing a violin within. He pulls it out, studying the rather beautiful crafted instrument. He knows his knowledge, he's studied everything. Grabbing on the bow and holding the violin by his shoulder, Tsukasa begins playing a piece. Natsumi listens and she's left speechless by such passion and music he was playing. Dragonic hums, listening. Recalling that song. Yes, the song of a man of each millennium century playing this song for a demon with such beauty and soul. Such a sad song. Eventually Tsukasa finishes playing and comments, unimpressed. Could have been better. Immediately Absol bites at Tsukasa's leg, causing him to shout in agony. "Damn mutt," he yells, kicking his bitten leg off her. Absol releases her grip and grins, barking. "Absol," Dragonic chuckles as he says. "Resume what you were saying, Tsukasa." Tsukasa groans. Annoyed, rubbing his bitten leg before he resumes. "Anyway, the Fangare are monsters that absorb the life force of humans who they view as both their enemy and prey." The dragon smirks. Most impressed, the Decadriver is learning what Tsukasa needs to know. Natsumi groans uneasily, not wanting her life force to be devoured. End result is that those who are drunk from them will cease to exist. Think of it like, Tsukasa starts saying, though stuck on what that would look like, until Dragonic points out, grinning. Like the android, Cell, from Dragon Ball. Tsukasa smirks, liking the reference. Dragonic nods, though adding, except less graphic. Natsumi still groans, her legs now shaking, frightened. She really doesn't want to be eaten. The group exits the studio to see the new world and an interaction when a guy passes Tsukasa, excusing him before turning into a Fangare and flies off. What was that? Natsumi questions, extremely uneased, hiding behind Tsukasa. Absol barks, sniffing more Fangare hiding human appearance. Dragonic hums, coming with a conclusion. Seems in this AR world, both humans and Fangare have accepted the other and are coexisting. Tsukasa scoffs, agreeing. The group explores around more to get a better clue, with Tsukasa riding on his bike with Natsumi gripping on his back. Absol follows with great speed and Dragonic flying. They arrive in the middle of the city to learn that indeed the Fangare are under a truce to live among humans by their leader. That, and they accepted the idea of the Fangare king to make sure that remains as such. Dragonic adds to his later statement. Tsukasa scoffs, still unimpressed, before questioning. "Then we've come to a world already fine." Dragonic hums, thinking about, and looks around. Indeed, he can tell the difference between human and Fangare and can tell they are living in some peace. Though he could smell something that will change that. Not everything is what it seems. Dragonic begins putting it on, adjusting his fedora. If the current king is not strong to hold his title in this peace, things can escalate and turn ugly. Tsukasa hums, agreeing with that, and at the same time surprised he knows what Dragonic is talking about. "Good to know," he begins to reply, till they all hear a scream. They turn to see a woman being attacked by a Fangare, tossing her onto the ground. "Well then," Tsukasa begins saying before making a joke about it. "Peace doesn't win wars, it's more violence." Dragonic, Natsumi, and even Absol gaze firmly at him from his joke. Tsukasa coughs, upset by their non-humor nature, and runs forward. "Now I'm taking you," The Fangare begins to say to the female human until he's suddenly kicked in the back by Tsukasa. He smirks smugly, telling him with a taunt, "Sorry about the kick, but I'm here to kick you right back down." Single quote, ellipsis, single quote, single quote. Silence from Natsumi, Absol and Dragonic from his other joke. Hard crowd. Tsukasa mutters, pulling out the decade card, and he then attaches the decadriver around his waist. He then shouts, sliding the card into the driver. Henshin. The card slides in and he pushes the handles, activating it as it glows. Kamen ride. Decade. The decadriver shouts as Tsukasa transforms into Decade, swiping his hands. The Fangare gets mad and the two engage in battle with Decade just toying with him. Evading its attacks and lands precise punches and kicks back without much effort. "You're done bullying the human?" Decade asks the monster, picking him up and upper punches him upward. Watches him slowly fall down and then thrust kicks him backwards into the ground. "Human?" Dragonic mutters, eyeing the woman, and sniffs towards her direction. He then startles, realizing that she's not human, warning Tsukasa. "Whoa, wait, Tsukasa, so you're Decade." A voice speaks up as Decade turns to see a well-dressed little boy appearing and walking up towards him. Decade looks at the child and tells him, "You know this is not a place for someone your age. Best you run off before you get hurt. I won't tolerate anyone from hurting my servants. Including you, devil." The kid then suddenly declares, leaving Decade rather stunned, just uttering out both humorous and puzzled, "Come again? Kavat." The boy shouts as flying out of nowhere is a golden, red-colored bat-like robot. "Let's go, Wataru." The bat actually speaks up as the boy grabs him and puts it near his hand. Soon the bat bites, forming markings on the boy's face as a chain-like belt manifests around his waist. Decade startles as the boy declares firmly, "Henshin." He places the bat on the center of the belt as it glows and turns the boy invisible for a moment before transforming into a fully grown man version that was Kamen Rider Kiva, the red, silver vampire-like theme chained rider with bright yellow-like bat wing-like eyes. Decade lets out an "oh," while Natsumi just drops her jaw. Single quote, ellipsis. "Okay then, I didn't see this coming. Reminds me of another world, a world that the Super Sentais were put in the West and known as Power." She begins to say, remembering a show that did the same thing, and Decade interrupts, annoyed. "I get the gist, Natsumi made me see that Turbo. Not a fan." Kiva battle poses to fight Decade. The magenta just chuckles, waving his hand in front towards him, declaring, "Fine then, Kiva. Come at me." Kiva immediately comes charging, as did Decade, the two clashing. "Not again." Natsumi complains, not happy that Tsukasa is fighting another rider. She groans, just wishing he just listens to her about being a hero. Dragonic watches silently with Absol, wanting to see how the fight will go in Tsukasa's favor. At first both riders seem to be evenly matched, but Decade is warming up, now stepping up and giving a beating to Kiva with superior fighting skills. He kicks Kiva backwards, scoffing that this is supposed to be the frightening king. Panting, Kiva changes into the blue-colored Garulu form with a curve-like blade. Kiva starts acting like a beast, slashing Decade with each swing, sparks flying as he's pushed back. "Tsukasa!" Natsumi shouts in horror. Dragonic watches, waiting for him to finally use the Kamen ride cards, and yet he didn't. Decade instead pulls out the ride Booker sword form and repels his swings right back, slashing Kiva right back with greater force. Kiva is forced to switch into the green-colored Basaha form with a bubble-like blaster weapon. He starts firing rapid bubble blasts at Decade, who evades them until he suddenly slips, not realizing the bubbles explode and liquefy the ground. Kiva starts shaking on the water and fires rapid shots, hitting Decade across his body. Decade then switches his sword to blast form and slides a card into his decadriver, pulling out an attack card. He slides it in. Attack ride. Blast. The decadriver proclaims Decade multiple energy shots at him. Kiva repels with his own, but Decade's were too many and penetrate through his own. damaging Kiva before pushed back. Kiva now switches into the purple-colored Daga form with a massive fist-like hammer. He charges, swinging the massive hammer with decade force to dodge around each swing. That was till Kiva slams the hammer downward, releasing a powerful shockwave that knocks Decade off his feet and then hit by the hammer like a golf ball. It sends Decade back, grunting. Tsukasa stop avoiding it and change into Kuga. Dragonic suddenly orders, upset seeing enough of this one-sided fight, the one-sided being Decade holding back. Decade gets back and instead pulls out another attack card, sliding it into the waist. Attack Ride. Illusion. The device announces as Decade glows and 4 additional Decade clones appear beside the original. Each one swipes their hands, coming at Kiva to Dragonic's annoyance. Kiva is forced to swing his hammers again as each Decade copy dodge it and proceed to punch and beat down on Kiva on all sides. Kiva takes the blows and now uses the full power of the hammer. Releasing an orb and swings the hammer like a spinning top, releasing the orb in a powerful explosion. It takes down all the copies in an instant but gives the original Decade the perfect chance to aim his gun as he slides the final attack card. Final Attack Ride. The Deca driver speaks as Decade takes aim with the ride booker as 10 holographic cards materialize before him towards Kiva in a row. Taking the shot, he fires an energy blast into the first holographic card in front. Decade. The shot goes through the holographic card and then immediately moves towards the next and next. Each one faster than before until the blast hits Kiva before he knows what hit him and explodes on impact. Kiva is sent crashing back, reverted back, breathing heavily with smoke coming out. Tsukasa-kun did it, Natsumi proclaims, smiling while clapping. Dragonic nods, though he was gambling on winning with just Decade's powers. Decade twirls the blaster gun back into sword form, swiping the blade by its back. Kiva gets up weakly, struggling on his feet. Let's finish this, Decade proclaims, running at him for the finish blowing. Natsumi freaks out with Dragonic watching as he can sense about to intercept the moment. As Decade prepares to strike down the weakened Kiva, a voice calls out to stop. Stop it, Tsukasa. Just then a figure gets in between and tanks the slash of Decade. Everyone startles as it is Kuga, still standing his ground. Kuga? Decade questions, puzzle, with Natsumi immediately certain who it was. Yusuke-kun? Kuga pants heavily, transforming to reveal it to be Yusuke, wearing a butler's outfit. Please don't attack Wataru-san anymore, Tsukasa. Yusuke pleads with him, not wishing for this fight to continue. Decade doesn't say a word as he too changes back to civilian form. How are you here? Tsukasa immediately demands, puzzled how he got into another world. Yusuke laughs nervously, saying pretty honestly, I'm not so sure myself. It's a long story. All he remembers was driving his bike and then suddenly being swiped away by a portal into this world. Dragonic flies towards them, tossing the woman in front of the three. Here you go, Prince of Fangare. The dragon declares with a smirk, with Natsumi overhearing that and asks, walking up to join Tsukasa. Prince? Dragonic points with his tail at the mark on the little boy's hand, showing the strange demonic-like tattoo marking, and explains. He has the mark of the Fangare king, meaning he's technically the leader of the Fangare. He then raises his finger and forms light upon the woman, gasping as it reveals the markings of a Fangare. And this lovely lady is a Fangare renegade. The dragon reveals, gazing at Tsukasa, who scoffs. The boy, Wataru, orders the Fangare that Tsukasa was beating on to take the traitor to be punished for her cruel actions. He then eyes Yusuke, demanding why he stopped their fight for only Yusuke to apologize kindly. Egoist brat, Tsukasa mutters, annoyed by the twerp's nature. Dragonic gazes at him smirking and comments, like someone else I know. Tsukasa scoffs, far from it, maybe a bit but not much. Wataru didn't say a word to Tsukasa, leaving with Yusuke explaining he's been helping Wataru to become a true king, believing in his dream to have human and Fangare to coexist. So you got stuck up here in deciding to help this kid to become the king of this world? Natsumi questions. That's the plan. Ann-san can take care of herself. I have to trust in her. With that, Yusuke says his goodbyes and follows after Wataru. Tsukasa watches him and just scoffs at Yusuke's logic. Why help a boy who doesn't seem to appreciate him? You feel pity for him. Dragonic asks him only for Tsukasa to respond. No, denial would be the best word. Natsumi walks up to him and asks concern. You okay, Tsukasa-kun? Perfect. Tsukasa just responds with a smug smirk, though he wished he could have finished his fight with Kiva. Dragonic scoffs at once more his egoist nature and calls him out. You could have won sooner by becoming Kuga. Tsukasa gazes at the dragon who scolds him. The rider card allows you to become the rider it has on. You have the potential to. Tsukasa immediately interrupts with a smirk. I'm already strong. Remember, Dragonic? I'm the destroyer of worlds. And I said you needed the power of the other riders to fully unlock your powers too. Dragonic, angrily gazing at him, reminds him firmly. Tsukasa scoffs, just responding. We'll see. He turns around and with narrowing his eyes towards his corner. Tsukasa spots someone seemingly have been watching them for a while now since the fight started. The figure turns away and leaves. Tsukasa smirks, curious as he starts walking away. Natsumi notices this and calls out to him. Tsukasa-kun, be back later. Checking up a lead to this world's problem. Tsukasa just replies, waving his backhand as he mounts on his bike and rides off. Natsumi tries to catch up, but he leaves her behind. She groans, crossing her legs, stomping her foot on the ground, muttering, Baka. She sighs, frowning. Never able to understand why Tsukasa has to run off and do his own thing without telling her anything. Why doesn't he listen? She ponders, complaining about his attitude. Dragonic taps his hat hovering next to her and simply states, he's stubborn and proud. If he was a dragon, he would be a lot worse. Natsumi's sweat drops now, imagining Tsukasa as a monster or dragon. Oh, she can only hope that doesn't ever happen. Dragonic smiles, patting her head, and assures her kindly. Don't worry, he'll be fine. Tsukasa may be a problematic guy, but he's a good guy. Natsumi blushes, wanting and will believe in that, and glad she's not the only one. Absol barks. Rolling her eyes, not so confident. Natsumi eyes the purple dragon and asks him, Dragonic, check on him, okay? Dragonic nods, smiling. Adjusting his fedora, he flaps his wings and flies off while shouting, I'll be back. The dragon flies off to catch up on Tsukasa. Chapter 4 Part 2 World of Music. Tsukasa is just having the best of days with a rider trying to kill. Just another day. Standing back up, Tsukasa pulls out the decade card in front of Kaisha, tapping it twice while holding it forward. Henshin, he shouts, sliding the card into the driver and pushes the handle as the device announces while glowing, Kamen ride. Decade. Tsukasa immediately transforms into Decade and comes at him with the ride booker turn into sword form. Kaisha clashes with the rider, sword to sword. Sparks fly as the two try to strike the other, but the other intercepts the other's attacks. Decade should be taking a huge lead, but Kaisha is determined to win. Was he that stubborn or stupid? You really are a fool to fight for someone like the fisherman. Decade questions, gripping the clash with Kaisha back. Kaisha, however, starts laughing at Decade's uneasiness. Like I care. Once alive, Mari and I. Kaisha starts uttering out like a madman, pushing him back while swinging his sword at him. It strikes Decade, pushing him back. He brushes off the damage, pulling out a card and dunks it into his belt. Attack ride. Invisible. The Deca driver shouts as Decade glows and turns invisible. Kaisha startles as he's suddenly slash and gut kicks back. Decade, swiping his sword invisible, resumes striking Kaisha across the body with his attacks. Kaisha is pushed back and now more than annoyed. Pulling back at the end of his weapon and pushing it back, Kaisha aims his gun and fires with a voice announcing, Burst mode. Immediately multiple energy shots fire from the weapon all over the area and one actually strikes a surprised Decade, turning visible. Kaisha now unloads more energy shots across Decade as he's pushed onto the wall. Kaisha approaches, pulling out the chip of his phone belt and slides it into the bottom department of his weapon. Ready. The robotic voice from the Kaisha gear responds as the bladed part of the weapon glows yellow. Pressing a dial on his phone belt, Kaisha takes aim with the robotic voice announcing as the outline of his body glows. Exceed charge. He pulls back on the weapon and fires a powerful energy shot, trapping Decade in a paralyzing state. Kaisha now charges as the bladed part of his weapon glowing as a large X-shaped, yellow energy drill manifests pointing towards Decade. See crap. Decade just utters certain this will hurt. Kaisha comes charging right towards the drill and becomes one with it, coming at Decade almost like lightspeed for the finishing Drago non-whip. Suddenly appearing out of thin air, Dragonic appears in between both riders with his index and middle left-handed fingers over his head as his tail glows fiery red like flames, resembling a dragon's head with glowing red eyes. It moves forward like a whip and smacks Kaisha, coming at Decade as energy, striking him and actually pushing Kaisha back and out of that state. Decade lets out a chuckle a bit, commenting on the dragon's arrival. Nice timing. Getting careless again, Tsukasa-kun. Dragonic taunts him with a smirk. Decade scoffs, not responding. Dragonic turns and adjusts his fedora downward, gazing with one eye at Kaisha, firing energy shots. The dragon guards with one of his wings like a shield as the attacks are blocked with damage done on the wing. Oh okay, it's him. The purple dragon says, aware who this rider is. Almost mocked. Kaisha declares, charging forward. Damn lizard. Dragonic takes a step and moves so fast in front of Kaisha with a dark glare. He then says coldly and firmly, I can't stand whines, unable to move forward. Forced to grip on the past to live on. The dragon then slams his claw on Kaisha's chest and thrusts him forward before Dragonic zigzags towards him with such speed, kicking him upward and then zigzagging blitzed him like pinball before slamming his tail across his face and crashes onto the ground. Dragonic hovers downward, swiping off the dirt off his shoulders unfazed. Decade watches, pretty sure this dragon could have solo this whole problem. It's honestly frightening from Tsukasa's point of view. Kaisha, getting back up, furiously pulls out a strange device, attaching the chip into it, and then attaches the device on the ankle side of his right leg. Exceed charge. The voice echoing from Kaisha proclaims as his yellow strip outline shines. He then leaps upward as another yellow energy drill manifests, pointing at Dragonic. As Kaisha kicks forward with both legs towards the target, pulling back his right claw, extending his fingers, Dragonic flies at the drill and Kaisha as the same claw ignites in red flames of energy. Drago non-claw. Dragonic roars, thrusting the claw as Kaisha goes through the drill as it comes charging. The claw and drill clash with sparks of energy flying between them. However, Dragonic's energy claw expands and grows larger, piercing through the drill and slashing Kaisha directly. Kaisha shout in agony as the attack rips through a dimensional hole and sucks Kaisha into it, taking him back to where he once belonged. Decade just staggers silent by what the heck did he just witness. He reverts out of his rider form as Tsukasa questions the dragon flying back to him. Single quote ellipsis. Did you just? Dragonic blinks, eyeing him, and just grins, replying. He's back to his own world. Don't worry. He'll live, for now though. Tsukasa doesn't bother questioning this, wiping off the damage he had and looks around to summon his own Aurora Curtain to get back to the world of Kiva. Before he can, Dragonic speaks up honestly. Kuga's powers, the power you will gain from the other worlds, they are a part of Decade's true power. Stopping himself, Tsukasa turns towards the dragon, who stares firmly at him. He wasn't frowning but just disappointed that Tsukasa doesn't rely on the powers he's gained. If he can't use them, Then it will hinder him into the worst situations that will lead to his death. Dragonic knows it better than most. Denying your true power leads to a quick death. Call it friendship, call it unity. It is the power of a destroyer who can protect the weak. Dragonic simply puts it, wishing to see that destroyer, that rider, to showcase his potential. Tsukasa doesn't say much, but he could tell the dragon shows his concern for him. If not, he wouldn't bother saving him. He scoffs, immature he was. Remember that. Tsukasa. Dragonic tells him seriously, certain he won't always save him, so he needs him to become the true decade. If not, then, I'll try. Tsukasa just responds almost half-hearted, though in reality he will remember it as long as he doesn't carelessly. Dragonic, startling a bit, smirks, sensing his aura and confirming it. He nods, telling the rider as he hops and sits on his shoulder. Come on, Natsumi is waiting for us. Tsukasa eyes him and scoffs, though smiling. Dragonic snaps his finger as a portal manifests and they step inside, returning back to the AR world of Kiva. While Tsukasa complains he could have done that too and Dragonic jokes around that he is better. The pair returns back to Hikari Studio, where immediately Natsumi dashes at Tsukasa and performs the laughing pressure point at his neck. Immediately Tsukasa starts laughing, struggling to breathe while Natsumi yells at him of concern. Where were you? I was really worried. Tsukasa calms down from his laughter, responding pretty chill. Oh, you know, stuff. He then raises an eyebrow, eyeing the small Fangare king sitting on the chair, and asks her, "What's the so-called king doing here?" Natsumi frowns, explaining to him that Wataru was attacked by a Fangare that basically dethroned him, but Yusuke saved him. Then after a self-doubt moment from the little boy and Yusuke still believing in his dream to coexist both races, another Fangare appears to bring back Wataru to be executed, but Yusuke stalls them, letting Wataru run to here. Tsukasa hums while drinking a cup of coffee, summarizing the whole explanation. So that's the gist of it. You ran away after you lost your first fight to keep your title of king, and Yusuke did his best to save you and got himself captured in the progress. Wataru gets mad at his statement and gets off his chair, glaring at him. What would you? The young boy tries uttering out, only to be stopped by Tsukasa, staring at him with such a look as if he was no king but a child. Wataru freezes up as Tsukasa tells him calmly and confidently, "We all have fears, but that's why one must overcome them. Otherwise, you won't be able to keep any promises." He touches his camera around his neck, reminded of Seo and his promise to her. He has no right to abandon her last wish. Tsukasa gets off his chair and starts walking out, to Natsumi's surprise. "Tsukasa-kun?" she asks, puzzled where he's going. Tsukasa turns around with a smirk and tells her so she doesn't nag him further. "I'm going to save that idiot who risked himself protecting a scared child he will likely still believe in." Withers that and then realizes he's not wrong. He only met Yusuke for a short while, but he believes in his dream of humans and Fangare to both live normal lives. Maybe he was just scared of believing that. Natsumi frowns, eyeing Tsukasa and sighs, nodding, just wishing him luck. Tsukasa nods as he's then stopped by Absol, barking at him seriously. "Absol." Tsukasa eyes the mon and could tell she wants to come just so Natsumi doesn't worry. He smirks and accepts, petting its head. "Alright, mutt. Let's go." Absol just smirks, for once not going to bite him, yet. "Dragonic, I got this one this time." Tsukasa tells the purple dragon, knowing he has to be the one to save this world. He pulls the Kuga Kamen ride card, knowing he can't let Yusuke die either. Even an idiot with a heart doesn't deserve that fate. "I just have to believe in him too," Tsukasa proclaims, showing him the card and heads off. Dragonic does not oppose him, just smirking that he got the message. He follows right behind him, just in case. Absol does the same. Frowning, Natsumi runs up to join them. Wataru watches them leave, surprised how selfless they are, and also ponders about the girl. He felt her and feels something familiar about her. She doesn't know about herself? The group approaches the tower with Castle Doran resting within. In their path to the tower building are multiple fangirl awaiting their new king's orders. They then spot the two and stop them from entering. Natsumi gulps to see so many here. Out of my way, fangirl. Or be destroyed. Tsukasa threatens the monster to walk inside with no problem and not bluff while also strapping the belt around his waist. You dare oppose us, human? A fangirl speaks up angrily only for Absol, charging forward, slams multiple monsters with Psycho Cut including the one that spot. They scream in agony before they're consumed by rough play, destroying them. The other fangirl staggers by this while Tsukasa smirks at the mutt's strength. He then declares holding up the Decade card. We do. Henshin. He slides the card into the Decadriver as it announces when Tsukasa pushes its handles forward. Kamen Ride. Decade. Tsukasa transforms into Decade as he pulls out the Kuga card. He slides it into the belt once more speaking. Kamen Ride. A fangirl comes charging at Decade who just pushes the handles and activates the belt, changing him. Kuga. In the same lights of his transformation but using Kuga's transformation sounds, Decade becomes Kuga evading the punch. Decade Kuga starts punching the same fangirl with multiple strikes with so much more ease that the monster shatters into pieces. The others are startled by such force as did Absol watching. Natsumi watches amazed as one fangirl spots her and she panics until the monster hisses, turning back and comes at Decade. That confused Natsumi. Why would it ignore her like that? However, Decade knew Mighty's strength wasn't enough. He pulls out one of the form ride cards, recalling from Natsumi and Dragonic that it allows him to become one of Kuga's other forms. Let's try these. Decade declares sliding the card in with the Decadriver announcing. Form ride. Once more Decade pushes one side of the handles as he becomes the arrow gun wielding form of Kuga. Kuga Pegasus. One of the fangirl comes at him with such speed only for Decade to evade him with Kuga Pegasus's inhuman accuracy and movement, kicking him back to the others. Pulling back the handle, Decade Kuga fires an arrow shot that pierces 5 fangirl in a row including the fast one, destroying them. Decade dunks another card into his belt as the belt glows announcing. Form ride. Kuga Dragon. He now takes on Kuga's dragon form, twirling around the mighty blue staff. He comes swinging and strikes the remaining fangirl with fairly ease, shattering them. Decade swipes one end of the staff like a sword. Not even warming up, however, more fangirl begins appearing out of nowhere. Absol panics using Detect to dodge the attacks and warns Decade with a bark. More huh? Decade just says unimpressed, charging at them. Absol barks, her eyes glowing. As she's going to use Night Slash while Decade Kuga twirls his staff like a show-off, but before the monsters do anything someone leaps above them and strikes them with a downward kick, striking them down as flames erupt and explode them. This catches the two off guard as the flames blow away to reveal what seems to be Kuga. This surprises Natsumi as Decade approaches him. Kuga? Decade utters out as he calls out to him. Yusuke, I thought you'll still be captive? Or did you realize how stupid you were not fighting back? Kuga turns around and responds. Sorry, but I think you're confused with someone else. Decade startles a bit as Kuga deforms and reveals a different person. I'm Yusuke Godai. Nice to meet you, this man says with a smile and a thumb up, almost similar to Yusuke. This shocked the two, especially Decade. No doubt the Decadriver's doing, but he knows who this man is. Just uttering out, the true Kuga of the real world of Kuga. This Yusuke nods, still smiling, but soon becomes serious, asking of him. Sorry to interrupt you, but Tsukasa Kadoya. I must fight you. Decade doesn't show it, but he's stunned while Natsumi is shocked. Who was this man to know who he was? Though why fight him? Oh, fight me? I'm far from flatter. Decade states, trying to sound humorous though he has no time for this nonsense. This Yusuke frowns, not wishing to fight a fellow rider, but it must be done, explaining his cause. I don't wish to fight another rider who protects the weak, but I can't let you continue destroying our worlds. Decade could tell who might be behind this and just respond. You too, huh? Did Narutaki send you too? Never heard of him. Henshin. Yusuke, however, replies and immediately shouts. Performing the same pose and hand motion with the same belt manifesting around his belt. This Yusuke transforms into Kuga's mighty form, but he looks different with golden lining now shown across the outfit. Rising mighty Kuga. A different mighty Kuga? Decade tells himself mentally, never seeing this form before. Regardless, Decade comes charging, swinging the staff at him, and Kuga just stands there. The staff hits Kuga by the chest and does nothing while the staff snaps in half. Decade startles as Kuga slams a fist across his chest and actually slams him back into a wall. Absol gasps. Staring surprised by that, Decade comes out grunting, breathing heavily by what the power this Kuga has. He can't let him get the chance, grabbing a rider card and slides it into his belt. Form ride. The Deca driver declares, changing Decade into the sword Kuga form. Kuga Titan. Decade twirls the sword and comes charging. Slashing Kuga, who repels each sword swing with his forearms, deflecting them with no damage. This shocked Decade as Kuga thrusts a kick, forcing Decade to block with the fuller of the sword. The kick connects the flat side of the blade and snaps it while kicking Decade back so hard it reverts him out of the Kuga form. Decade pants holding his sword and slides a card into his belt. Final attack ride. The Deca driver proclaims as he pushes the handles and holds the sword with both hands as the holographic cards materialize in a straightforward line in a row. Decade. Decade swings the sword and fires a powerful energy slash through the cards, becoming stronger and faster, passing through each card before hitting Kuga directly. It causes an explosion, covering the area in smoke. Decade scoffs, surprised he's that much of an idiot. That was until he sees a figure emerging from the attack's smoke. What in the Decade utters out as emerging from the smoke is Kuga's, its eyes glowing red. Mighty Kuga has become black then red as he comes slowly towards him, now amazing mighty Kuga. Decade. Breathing unease by this new form, comes charging at him and swings down multiple slashes on him, but no scratch or flinching from the attacks. Instead, rising mighty Kuga lifts up his right leg and delivers a powerful blow across Decade, so much it sends him flying off his feet and tosses onto the wall and through it. Absol just stares speechless as Decade grunts in actual pain, falling down on crawling up. He's never felt such a blow and actually worries a Kuga rider kick might kill him. Kuga slowly approaches Decade, going to finish this fight, but then Absol leaps in front, barking angrily, protecting Decade. Absol. Natsumi blushes, smiling softly that Absol does care. Kuga stares at the strange dog-like creature, showing her concern for Decade. He doesn't say much and turns around walking. Decade staggers, grunting by the blow he took, but it didn't change how pissed he was. Where are you going? Aren't you planning to finish this? Decade demands, annoyed why he's stopped in the finishing blow. Kuga stops and simply tells him to turn halfway around. When you are at your strongest, I will. I refuse to win like this. Decade squeezes his hands tightly by that comment. Kuga then adds, knowing he came here to save someone. Beside, I should let you at least try to save your friend. The other Kuga, right? Scoffing a bit by that naive, kind-hearted nature, Decade asks. You're just another idiot, aren't you? Kuga just raises his hand and gives him a thumbs up. He turns around and walks away. Decade gets up, eyeing Absol, who barks. Absol. Decade stares at the dog like Pokemon and chuckles, petting her head. Absol blushes angrily, snarling. Turning her head, Decade just shakes his head at how prideful she is too. He gets up and tells her, "Let's go then, Mutt." Absol nods as the two head inside the building. Natsumi sweat drops, realizing this is out of her league, and runs away to take cover. Going up to the top floor, they search where Yusuke is, splitting up. Luckily Absol has already sniffed his scent previously, so she has a better chance in finding him. Where the hell could he? Decade questions, looking around as he approaches a door that it opens up. He watches in surprise as he comes across someone walking out from one of the doors, carrying the IXA knuckle transformation item. Decade looks up and sees in surprise. It was that guy with the hat who waved at him in the AR world of Kuga. But how the hell is he here? The young man eyeing Decade back smirks, covering his eyes, and waves hello again. Decade staggers, annoyed by that. You, he starts uttering, approaching him until Absol barks for him. Absol. Decade turns to see the mutt pointing towards where Yusuke is. He turns back quickly and that man is gone. He grunts, no point looking for him if Yusuke is going to die. Still, he hopes that this is the last time he crosses him. Decade follows Absol to the back of a pipe room and comes across Yusuke, on the ground panting. They also come across a beetle-like Fangare. Turning to face Decade, so you've come to stop me, human? The Fangare speaks, which Tsukasa recognizes the voice. He scoffs, really getting the gist of the situation. Tsukasa-san. Yusuke just utters out weakly, really beaten up. Decade turns around facing him and just tells him confidently, "Leave him to me, why don't you?" Yusuke grunts, trying to get up but is too wobbly. The Fangare pulls out the forced kavat as the kiva belt manifests. Henshin, he declares, placing the bat onto the center of the belt, glowing. He not only transforms into kiva but even changes into the Dugaba ki form, the combination form of all three arms monsters together. Decade just proceeds to fight the Fangare regardless. This, however, was a struggle for Decade, getting blasted back with almost no damage done back at the enemy. Decade pants, still exhausted from his past fights. Not sure any of Kuga's forms will do against this foe. Absol growls, about to jump in, but Decade raises his hand up to not bother, he's got this. Just then Wataru shows up and immediately goes to help Yusuke back up on his feet. Decade lets out a chuckle, telling himself, took the kid long enough to realize his weakness. The Fangare, seeing this as he overpowers Decade, begins expressing that a true king should not be soft or kind but strong and ruthless, and one that conquers the weak. He starts preaching how the Fangare will consume humanity, and Decade heard enough of his stupid logic. He believes in the law. Decade begins to declare, to Wataru's surprise. He points at the boy, adding, he believes humans and Fangare can live together. That is nothing but a dream. The Fangare protests, only for Decade to protest back. Despite that, he believes. The Fangare gets mad, coming at Decade, but this time with the Ride Booker Blaster mode. He uses the blast attack, pushing him back. You gave up. You lost to your own weakness and forsook the law. But Wataru fights for those who believe. That is what a king is. The qualifications of a king. Decade proclaims, knowing the boy has a desire he wasn't able to keep. He looks at Kavat, still unconscious, and shouts at him, aiming with his gun blaster. Wake up already, bat. Decade fires multiple shots at the belt, which reawaken Kavat. Restored, he flies off the bee-like Fangare, cancelling the Kiva transformation. Kavat, blinking confused, flies back to Wataru, who eyes Decade, misguiding this devil. Decade just chuckles as he changes the Ride Booker into sword form and comes slashing the Fangare, despite him countering with his own weapon. Decade pushes him to a corner, their weapons grinding on top of the other. Isn't this what you wished for? For Wataru to make your lost dream come true? Decade tells the monster, fully aware who he is. The Fangare staggers, even angrier, demanding, furious, you bastard, who are you? Just a passing through common rider. Remember that. Decade responds, almost amused, as he kicks the Fangare back and then comes charging, tackling himself and the monster right out of the window. Decade falls, but then he's caught by the hand by Wataru, now transformed into Kiva, both landing on the ground safely. He eyes the other rider and just scoffs, saying in his own way, Good to know you can be a king. Kiva nods, asking for his help. Let's finish this quickly, together. Decade just lets out a chuckle, accepting it. Just then 3 cards pop out from the ride booker, which Decade catches. He stares as the blank cards become Kiva cards, including the final form ride. My thoughts exactly. Decade responds, sliding the final form card into the Decadriver and pushes the handles, activating it. Final form ride. This might tickle. Decade warns Kiva, who didn't follow, but Decade pushes him back. Move. He then grabs on Kiva's back as the rider suddenly transforms into a massive cravat-like boa, with Kiva's sealed kick for his rider kick turns into a large arrow. Kiva arrow. The Fangare startles as Decade slides the final attack card and pushes the handles while taking aim with the bow. Final attack ride. Kiva. The Decadriver proclaims as Decade takes aim and fires the arrow. Shooting with such speed it pierces through the Fangare and he crashes onto the surface of the building behind him and leaves the cravings of Kiva before becoming Decade and explodes. Decade tosses the bow up as it transforms back into Kiva, swiping his hands. Not bad, kid. Decade comments, deforming back. Kiva eyes him and nods, realizing that Decade isn't this devil. If not for him, if not for Yusuke, if not for humanity, he might have lost his way. Yusuke runs up to them and smiles, relieved they were working. Kiva deforms as Yusuke tells the young prince, kneeling down and patting his shoulder. I knew you could do it, Wataru. Wataru eyes him and actually smiles, thankful for him deeply. Tsukasa doesn't say a word as he grabs his camera and takes a photo of the moment, the time that humans and Fangare can become good friends. He then walks away, needing to do one more thing before this mission here is done. Dragonic, arriving on the scene, spots him leaving and hums, following him with Absol, returning to that abandoned house. Tsukasa looks around, carrying the violin case in his possession. There he spots the Fangare enemy, still alive, but the wound of the last attack is about to kill him. He staggers to see Tsukasa staring at him back, opening up the case. How did you? The monster tries uttering, revealing to be the man from early from his shattered reflection. Tsukasa just smirks, humbled, and just knows well about those who take others' dreams away. I know the mutual feeling of taking away another's dreams. He comments, recalling how his mistake cost Seo's life. His grief back then will remain until he can keep his sister's dream into a reality. The Fangare actually chuckles weakly. Surprise, a human can comprehend his pain. His own suffering for failing on his own dream. Maybe his son will make it a reality. Maybe it's not too late for you. The Fangare just says, hoping he doesn't fall for the same despair. Tsukasa, staring silently, does not comment and begins playing the violin. He plays a sad piece. One Dragonic and Absol listen to the beautiful yet sad music being played from outside. The purple dragon, lying on the Pokemon's back, adjusts his fedora down while frowning slightly. One's dreams are precious, the purple dragon mutters, saddened, as he is reminded of times that he too failed to protect others' dreams and instead carries them on within him, wishing to make them a reality, and the reason they live on too. Even passing them to those who will make them come true is worth protecting. He says as a single tear drips from his face, biting his fangs angrily. Absol notices this and frowns, not saying a word, just whining, understanding his pain with a howl. The 3 return back to the Hikari studio to Natsumi's relief, and Yusuke was there, wanting to know that Tsukasa was okay. He scoffs at how naive Yusuke was, commenting how idiot he was. You think Wataru will be alright? Natsumi asks Yusuke if the young prince will be okay now. Yusuke thinks about it and replies with a big smile and a thumbs up. I'm sure of it. Tsukasa scoffs, smirking at his predictable answer. He then asks him, curious, what will you do then? Single quote ellipsis. Oh yay. Yusuke mutters out, not sure. pretty sure he could ask them to take him back to his world, but then he would owe them again. Thinking back, he needs to become stronger so when he returns back to his world he can protect Anne. Everyone smiles. Making his choice, Yusuke asks them, smiling, "Can I come along on your journey? I wish to repay you all for helping me." Natsumi smiles happily, willing to accept his help. Absol barks, not minding him. Dragonic had no option. Single quote ellipsis. "You're just hungry." Tsukasa, however, says uninterested. Yusuke glares about to protest that then his stomach starts growling. Yusuke sweat drops, laughing nervously. Single quote ellipsis. "Fine." Yusuke startles at Tsukasa smirking and says, tapping his chest, "Just don't slow us down, hero." Yusuke just eyes him and nods firmly. Not planning to. Dragonic smirks, flying towards the backdrop screen, grabbing on the rope. The dragon declares, facing the backdrop, "Let's find out our next destination." He pulls on the rope as the building starts shaking, teleported to the next world. However, the true Yusuke watches them leave, frowning as he notices the sky cracking. Again, here too, Yusuke mutters, upset, seeing the same event that has consumed his world. He looks back at where the studio was, muttering out of concern, "Tsukasa, are you really?" End of part 5. Like and subscribe.